I woke up yesterday morning with a spring in my step.
Start later, please.
I could never know where the day was.
Fast forward, Ed.
We have special co-host today helping us understand the team dynamics between an Enneagram Type 3 and Enneagram Type 4. Moira and David Rose are here to help us understand how that might show up in real life. So as we go through this, I'll let you kind of decide who's who in this situation, and then we'll talk about it at the end. But I am your host, Sarah Wallace. I'm so glad you're here. Today we are looking at the Enneagram Type 3, who is striving to feel outstanding, and matching them up with the Enneagram Type 4, who is striving to feel unique. These types, sometimes on the surface, can look so different, and at other times they do have some similarities that can make it sometimes difficult for people to understand, am I this or that? It doesn't happen often, but just hearing what their core strategy is, striving to feel outstanding, striving to feel unique, that there's some nuance there. There's some similarities, but there's some, it's like, I want to be above average. I want to be more than just the status quo. So sometimes people, like I said, not often, will struggle between those two. But today we're really going to look at, if you are this teammate, or you are working with one of these teammates, or maybe managing a people leader of these two types, we're going to look at some strengths that these two bring to one another, and they can be a really powerful duo, bring a lot of strengths and gifts and success to the team that they're working on when they're both really dialed in. And then we're going to look at some potential friction points, why that might happen, and we're specifically going to look at kind of the bullet point versus the backstory friction point that can often happen. And that's not limited to just Type 3s and Type 4s. Oftentimes you will see the 3s, but also sometimes most times the 8s, sometimes the 7s, sometimes the 1s, having more of that, like, just get to the point, give me the bullet point list, versus the Type 4, who tends to have more of a backstory they want to share. And that may also come up with our Type 2s, potentially our Type 6s, just wanting to explain, give some more context, give some more details why they do it. It's going to be a little bit different, but today we're really going to focus on the Type 3 and Type 4, and we'll also talk about another friction point that they can sometimes run into with one another, and then we'll close it out with some ideas for how to navigate this relationship to be more successful, collaborative, understanding, ideally less stressful and irritating and frustrating with one another. And then I'll have to check with you at the end to see if you know who is which type in this scenario from the opening clip. So we'll play that again. But let's just kind of lay the foundation, quick reminder about these two types. Our Type 3 is known as the pace setter with their leadership style. They are motivated by success, efficiency, productivity. They love goals, setting goals, reaching goals. They appreciate measurable results, and they appreciate direct communication. Now, this direct communication is going to be a little bit different than the Type 8 direct communication, where they can absolutely have political savviness as well, be aware of how their words are going to land, but more often the Type 3 is thinking that they're going to be a little bit more politically correct with their direct communication, where an 8's just going to kind of, I said what I said, whether whoever's in front of me, I'm going to say how I feel. I'm going to say what needs to be said. Where a 3 might kind of tweak or tailor that direct communication, mold it a little bit to fit the setting or to fit the person who's in front of them. With that, they prefer their meetings to be concise, solution focused, and action driven. Whereas our Type 4, who is striving to feel unique, their leadership style is known as the visionary. They say Steve Jobs was a Type 4. I want to make a dent in the universe. I want to do meaningful work. They are motivated by authenticity, by that deep, meaningful work, deep, meaningful connections, and they really value creativity. They value self-expression and personal insight, being able to be introspective, and then their conversations are going to be a little bit more nuanced. They're going to be a little bit more thoughtful, maybe even a little bit more, not maybe, probably more emotionally rich. There's going to be, you're going to understand how they got to whatever question they're asking or point they're making. And for our fours, they bring a lot of important gifts to a team. And one of the things that we'll talk about when we're doing our group mapping activities with teams who are do our workshops and programs is, and you might have heard me say this before if you've listened to the show before, or if this is your first time, welcome, and this will be the first time you'll hear me say this, but not the last, where most of the workshops that I do are for corporate clients. And so where I work in, there's the least common types tend to be type 4, type 5, and type 7. Type 4s love to kind of be the only one at times. We joke about that. Type 4s, they with that striving to feel unique, they like to be the only one. But there are groups that have a handful of other 4s on the team. And when there's not that type 4 presence, sometimes we'll have a conversation about what might be missing potentially that needs to be intentionally brought in. For example, on a sales team, they might have a lot of 3s and 7s and 8s potentially, and they're missing that emotional connection. Maybe they're missing that creative storytelling that is able to, that's used to persuade somebody to move on your product or service. And so not hiring a 4, not anybody on your team trying to turn into a 4, but you can use the strength of the 4 and be more intentional with that powerful storytelling. If you're in sales, for example, sometimes leadership teams won't have a type 4, very heavy on the 3, the 8, 1s, 9s, even 6s at times. And then, so we'll talk about in that situation, the 4s, the 2s as well, can really bring that empathetic, a lot of emotional intelligence, a lot of deep thought, meaningful connections to a leadership team who can then share that ability, that leadership skill with their team. And as driven as our sales teams, our leadership teams can be, there is a place and a time to have those meaningful connections with their clients, with the people on their team. So 4s bring a lot of strengths. And I wanted to spend a little bit of time there for the 4s, just because I think sometimes it's, the 3 is the natural leader. They're focused on success. And we love our 3s too. And I'm going to love up on you in a little bit too. But I just wanted to share that, especially because so many teams don't have that type 4 energy. And so here's some things to think about that might be missing from your team dynamic without that presence. So there's that. Now, we've all probably been in a meeting where we can resonate with one of two energies here. We can, we're the person who is just thinking, gosh, I just wish they would get to the point, give me the bullet points. And there's the other person in the meeting who is just taking up the time to share the backstory, given all the nitty gritty details, and thinking, gosh, I might feel dismissed if the 3 would jump in and just ask for bullet points. And so there is some frustration that can happen in that. But like I said, there's also a lot of strengths and complementing strengths that these two have for one another. The first one is they balance that drive with depth. So our type 3 is going to be really great at keeping things moving forward. They want to go far, they want to go fast, very action oriented. Whereas our 4s are going to balance that by ensuring we're having some deeper meaning on the project, maybe deeper connections with the team working on the project. Maybe we're infusing some creativeness that we normally wouldn't be able to, or we normally wouldn't think about adding in because we're so focused on just getting to the goal and getting the project completed. So we're gonna have that balance between those two. Another way that they can really complement each other well when those strengths are dialed in is bringing in that innovation. We just talked about that creativeness, innovation meeting execution. So our type fours are a wealth of original, one of a kind, totally unique ideas. And our type three can help bring those ideas to life, turn them into action. Type threes will tell me a lot of times, I just don't really love a brainstorming session. It's just kind of come get me when we know what we're going to do. Whereas someone like a four or maybe a sevens who love to kind of brainstorm and come up with new ideas and new ways of doing things, they can bring in the strength of the three to help make sure those ideas actually get brought to life. So that can be a really powerful combination. And another way that they can really complement each other well is pairing this results-driven tendency with this emotional intelligence awareness. Fours tend to also be very self-aware, others aware. And so a four is going to add that emotional depth to a goal-oriented workplace. They're going to make people feel seen and heard, and our type three is going to keep us on the track so we're hitting our goals and we're celebrating success together. So they're going to ensure that those deep discussions, those creative discussions, interesting discussions that we might have as a team actually lead to tangible outcomes. And so again, we need them both, and they can really bring out the best in one another when those strengths are dialed in. Now, there are going to be some friction points. The one that we're going to talk about today is this idea of bullet points versus backstory. But the other one that I see happen most often after this one is the fours are very focused on being authentic, and they want other people to be authentic, whereas the threes, not that they intentionally seek out to be deceitful or inauthentic, but they are striving to feel outstanding. They want that successful image. They want to be seen a certain way. And because of that kind of political savviness, that networking savviness, they're able to kind of shape shift. Like, okay, over here, I need to be this person. But in this group or with this person, I'm going to be this person. And I'm going to say this thing. I'm going to show up this way. And it is for the benefit a lot of times of the three. They're doing it, and that takes emotional intelligence as well. But for a four, watching from the outside, it can kind of feel like, well, who is this person really? Are they, like, they seem kind of fake? Who are they really? Can they really be trusted? Can I count on them? And so there will be some conflict with the four seeing the three that way, but it also can go the other way, where a three might get frustrated at a four for not reading the room. It's like, hey, you can't give the big long backstory to our executive leadership team, or maybe don't say that to this team versus, what you might say over here, where a four is going to be like, well, I want to be my true authentic self to everybody. If I'm being authentic, then I am who I am, no matter who's in front of me. And there, like with everything, there is just that balance. You may have to be a little bit more buttoned up, or you may have to, have more of that executive presence if you're in front of the executive team presenting that. And a three is going to, this might come a little bit more natural to them, or they're going to see the opportunities to do that. And they might get frustrated that the four doesn't see that as clearly. Now, that's not to say that either one of those can't do it. They absolutely can. We're just kind of talking common tendencies here. So that's one friction point. The biggest friction point that I personally see is this, hey, can you just get to the point, versus the four I need to give you the full picture first. I need to make sure you understand where I'm coming from. So why this happens is because that 3 really values efficiency and action. They want to get to the bottom line so they can assess and then move forward. Understand what's going on, keep going. I want to sit around pontificating. We don't necessarily want to talk about our day or our feelings. We want to get to the goal. We want to make things happen. And a type 4 really values depth. They really value storytelling. And so they actually feel like context, that additional backstory that the type 3 might feel like is a waste of time, they see it as crucial information to fully understand a situation or a decision. So immediately we have different lenses on here. We're seeing things completely different. And of course it makes sense why some friction might happen, some miscommunication might happen. So an example scenario might be you have a type 3 and a type 4 in a meeting. The type 3 asks for a project update, expecting just to get a quick overview. And then the type 4 launches into this big long story about what inspired the project direction, why they shifted an idea, and how they're feeling about what they're working on. The type 3 might get impatient, feel like their time is being wasted. And the 4 on the receiving end of that might feel like they're being dismissed when that 3 cuts them off and just says, can you get to the point? So you can see, how this could cause some friction, some challenges in the workplace with this dynamic. Now, there are a couple of specific ideas for how to maybe compromise or better understand one another and giving each other, meeting them where they're at, while not totally letting go of the things that you're good at and what's important to you. So for a type 3, one of your compromise strategies might be being more patient and allowing some storytelling. Now, you just might have to cut somebody off sometime. It's going to happen. But when possible, allow that storytelling, because it does build connection and it does give insight into motivation. You might be more motivated to move forward towards that goal because you have some additional context. Maybe there's a really cool client story that the 4 shares, or maybe something really important happened on the team that the 4 is sharing a story about that is going to motivate, inspire you to work even harder towards that goal. So that information does end up being really important. Now, just saying, hey, type 3, be more patient, I think is a little... it's just a little fluffy. And so to make it more tangible, what we'll talk about sometimes during our workshops or our coaching sessions is for our 3 to just make sure that it happens, to just build it into the agenda. So if you're going into a one-on-one with your type 4 teammate, just say, hey, let's add on 15 minutes to this meeting so that I'm not feeling impatient. I'm not feeling frustrated when they go off on a tangent or start telling me more than maybe I think I need to know. I'm able to not get frustrated. I'm able to be more present because I've added that buffer time, whatever that is to you. Maybe it's just 5 minutes, maybe it's 30 minutes, whatever that is. But that is a really practical way to help yourself be more patient with the 4. You got it built in. Now, on the other side, our type 4, one of the things that you can do to help your relationship with the 3 is to start with the key takeaway before you add context. So an example might be, hey, type 3 calls on you. You say, well, the short answer is this, X. But there's some context on why I landed there. Do we have time for me to share a little bit more about how I got there? Maybe ask the question. Another thing that you could be aware of is pausing as you're telling that backstory. Taking some breaths, allowing some pauses so that if somebody does need to interject with a question or just to give you a time check, it doesn't feel like a total cutoff, and you're giving them that opportunity to step in. But if not, you can keep going. So those are some specific things that each of you can do. And some other kind of I guess bonus tips to think about is, as a 3, just reminding yourself that that storytelling isn't just fluff. It really does help build meaning and buy-in. Again, whether that is buy-in for a client that is in front of you, where you're maybe just trying to close the deal, but maybe there's an opportunity for them to share a story, to slow down, to add some time to your meeting so that they can talk more. Or maybe there is an opportunity for you to do a little bit more storytelling and world building and building in that meaning and deep connection to whatever it is, whatever that product or service is that you're selling. And obviously, this can be very helpful with the people that you work with day in and day out, the team members, and building collaboration, a more collaborative environment, building trust. And and then before I get to the 4, the other question, the other tangible question for our type 3 can be to not just interrupt and dismiss, but maybe you do have to interject, but just say respectfully, thoughtfully, like what I'm hearing here, but just for the sake of time, to make sure that we get out of here on time, what would you say is the key takeaway here? Like, what should we leave here knowing? And so you can kind of guide the 4 to get to that point if needed. And then for our 4, some additional things to keep in mind is just to be mindful of time. Go into the meeting knowing, hey, we have a cutoff. It says it's going to be a 30-minute meeting. So knowing that, or you may need to ask or just to confirm or clarify, hey, I have a 2:00 stop on our time today. Is that a pretty hard stop, or do we have any leeway with that? So be mindful of the time, especially when you're talking to your 3, and try starting out the meeting, the conversation with the conclusion first. Then if there's time, you can get into sharing more about the backstory. And then if you do feel like, I really want to make sure that I share this context here, this additional information, just ask the question, hey, there's some additional things I'd like to share. Do you want just the short version or the full story? And give them the option depending on time, because they might say, you know what, for the purposes of this group meeting, let's just do the short version. But I know we have our one-on-one later, and so we'll get into the full story later, or let's grab coffee and you can share more of the full version with me then. But asking the question can be something that others might really appreciate it. So at the end of the day, these 2 types can make a really great team. We talked about some of the reasons why that is. Our 3 keeps things moving. The 4 ensures that there is depth and authenticity along the way. And so knowing now what we know, we have Moira here wanting to share the backstory, starting with the story about how she woke up that morning. And then we have David saying, start sooner, start later, start fast forward, so our type 3 kind of might have that energy. And that's just a clip for fun, right? We're just having some fun there. But I would love it if you happen to be watching this on YouTube to let me know if you are more of a bullet point person or more of a backstory person, and which type you resonate with. It doesn't have to be just a 3 or a 4, and how you navigate some of those friction points between somebody else who is the opposite of you. And for those of you listening, watching, this is something that we talk about during our programs, our workshops, understanding where the other person is coming from, and also understanding where we are coming from. Sometimes we don't realize the lens that we're viewing the world through. And so we're bringing some attention to that. We're becoming a little bit more self-aware, and we're being more others aware so that we can better manage our relationships at work. These are the exact things that we will talk more in depth about in our team workshops, in our team programming, like our Dream Team Certified Workplace program. So if that is something you are interested in bringing to your team, learning more about, allowing your team members to learn more about themselves, each other, all of that is over at EnneagramMBA.com. And I'm going to invite you to check out the options over there. With that, thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing. If you're dropping comments in the over here on YouTube, I appreciate hearing from you. It's always good to have a two-way dialogue, not just a one-way conversation here. So I appreciate you being here, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.
I woke up yesterday morning with a spring in my step.
Start later, please.
I could never know if the day was.
Fast forward, Ed.